Can you guys hear me? Yeah? Yeah, great. So it's amazing to be here, honestly. First, I'd like to thank both Manish and Shyam for helping me to be part of this wonderful initiative. Listening to people like Gomti Shankar, Anand, Mr. Janaki Raman, Sam Daniel, there's so much of insight into what they're doing. It is truly, truly, truly inspiring. Honestly, let me confess one thing before I start, is I know that there are a couple of people who are mad volunteers here. It feels good to be a speaker on this dais because even if your talk doesn't go well, there are a couple of people who will definitely clap for you. So that gives me a lot of confidence as a speaker, number one. Number two, let me, just to give you guys an introduction, I'm from this one very typical Telugu family from Andhra Pradesh, right? Oh, wait a second. There's no state called Andhra Pradesh now. It's kind of bad because, I was telling, one of the speakers, because my mom's from one side, dad's from the other side. It almost is like somebody asked me, which state are you from in India? I tell them, I have no clue, man. I have to probably wait for 10 years to know which state I belong to. But no matter, state or no state, one thing we do have is we follow this very typical life cycle. Okay, it's most like the butterfly life cycle. I know most of us have been in science class. We've learned the butterfly life cycle where there's a grasshopper, there's a silkworm, there's a butterfly. Similarly, we also follow this very typical life cycle, right? So we take birth. It's most like the 3 Idiot scene where your fate is sealed. Mera beta engineer banega. Life till 5th or 6th class is good because you get to play cricket in the evenings after your school. Then starts the entire hangama, right? So you're admitted into these IIT coaching centers where you are asked to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Then you push off to your school from there. Then you come back to your house in the evening at 6 o'clock. And then you prepare for your next day, do your homework, and go back to sleep, right? And this regime continues till 12th class. And then, the people who can mug up really well end up in IITs and NITs. The people who can mug up end up in private deemed universities. And the people who cannot mug up at all or are very honest engineers, stay back in Hyderabad. And as a very honest engineer, because I say very honest engineer because we used to study only one night before every exam. So that's what I mean by very honest engineers, right? As part of the U-turn, one thing I'd like to tell you guys today is the most important thing for a person to take U-turn is belief, right? And that belief for me came when I was in my 2nd year engineering. I was volunteering with this organization called Make a Difference as a teaching volunteer. And then post my engineering, I was also facing this dilemma because most of us, after we complete our engineering, it's most like this export-import sort of a thing, right? So it's a classic case of brain drain where all of us are exported to America, and no matter if you study in IIT, NIT, or anything, you all end up in universities. It's most like classroom reunion. You look at your 10th class photo and you look at university photo there, it's almost resembles like same faces. I had this opportunity of starting off a fundraising organization for Make a Difference, right? We'll come to it, but I'll today talk about 3 big numbers. As part of my speech, I'll just talk about 3 big numbers. Number 1, 17.6 crores. Number 2, 13 crore 20 lakh crores. Number 3, it's a data range. It's about 17 to 35, right? So I'm going to talk about only these 3 things. First, let's start with the 17.6 crores, right? 17.6 crores is the number of children living in orphanages or shelter homes or juvenile homes in India. This is the number. And if you stay in situations or centers like that, what exactly happens is, survey says for every 3 children who have a safe home to go back to in India, there are 2 kids who are staying in an orphanage or a shelter home, right? And if you stay in a situation like that, there's only 3% of students or children living in an orphanage who pass more than 12th grade. 3%, that's it. More than 97% of kids staying in an orphanage or shelter home drop out even before their 12th class. And that's a grave danger because they constitute about 40% of total children population in India as of now. If there are 400 million children in India, they constitute about good 40%, right? And also one more interesting data says, of every 100 crimes registered in India, about 56 are committed by young adults, and in most cases, it is committed by young adults who come from scenarios like an orphanage or a shelter home or juvenile home, who spend their childhood days in any of these things. It is one of the biggest challenges that we're facing as a country, and we have to solve it. I mean, how do we solve it? The solution is simple. We ensure there's a positive ecosystem that we're building around these kids, similar to all of us had, right? We had parental support. We used to go back home, we used to have good food to eat. We all attended convent schools or very good schools to study. Then we all came to colleges where we did our bachelor's or master's of engineering or whatever it is. But we need to ensure there's a positive ecosystem that is built around these children, ensure that they have the same parental support like all of us did. That is one part of the solution. But let me come to what other big challenges, right? The other big challenge is the funding bit, right? Just let's take like a very approximate calculation, okay? Today most of us, I'm guessing in this room, I'm not able to see most of you, but I'm guessing most of us, the average is about 19, 20 years in this room. In making us what we are today, there's at least an investment of 80,000 rupees to 1 lakh that went into each one of us, right? So what does this 80,000 or 1 lakh constitute of? It includes our food, clothing, education, school, movies, camps, whatever it is. It totally probably constitutes about 80,000 to 1 lakh rupees, right? Now let's say we're cutting down on all these things and we have a lot of subsidy being given by government, and we have to invest 50,000 rupees into each one of this kid. 50,000 rupees into about 17.6 crores, into about 15 years of investment, let's say, and that's a whooping 13 crore 20 lakh crores. I know most of you guys are engineers, probably thinking how many zeros are there. It's about 132 followed by 12 zeros. That is the kind of funding that we need to ensure is being pumped into this industry to solve such a huge issue. I mean, honestly, this has never been attempted in the world before. Not funds have been raised this much. So the idea of the organization that I'm leading in MAD is to ensure we build this agency which is capable, have the capacity, will, and determination to ensure the required funding is in place. Now it's easy to say, right? But let me give you guys, and the basis of forming this organization is community support, right? Because most of the places that these kids come from are either under-resourced in an orphanage or they lack community support. But the basis of forming a non-governmental organization or not-for-profit goes back, if you go back like, long ago, if there is a forest fire in your nearby village, or if there is a flood in your nearby village, what used to happen is the surrounding villages used to come, pool in all the funds, ensure the village is built back and is standing back in normal condition. Right? And you never used to wait for people in United Nations or Delhi or Hyderabad or Chennai for that matter, the Chennai governments to act and ensure you put off the fire or build a new village. Now we're expecting that. But the basis of forming non-governmental organizations in the first place was the community connect. Somewhere down the lane, as NGOs grew, that community link got lost. And that is a very important component, because the change is happening in your community and you're not participating in that, right? So we want to break that with the organization that we are forming, which is the Friends of MAD organization. What we plan to do is build this movement where youngsters can come forward and ensure they take up one activity as part of the entire movement and drive it, right? And why youngsters? Youngsters are thought to be less focused, less determined, selfish. Why youngsters? Because one thing that we believe in is youngsters assure guaranteed change. I mean, just look at the recent Arab Springs movement. Look at the civil rights movement. It is all led by youngsters like us. So we want to make youngsters the leaders in leading this movement, ensuring they take all the community support. Let me give you guys 2 examples of what recently happened in a couple of our cities where we're running our operations, to give a gist of how committed youngsters can be, right? Number 1, this happened about a year back in this city called Coimbatore. It's in Tamil Nadu. It's a very industrial city and slightly conservative, right? And the notion is, most of the charity that is done in the city either goes into religious organizations or goes into political organizations, but there's very little coming into grassroots level NGOs that are working. And there's this group of 10 youngsters from PSG College of Engineering who came together, conceptualized this one event, and went all out about the entire thing. They've done this thing called a baking workshop. It is called Santa's Kitchen. And by the end of the entire thing, people there, the event was so successful that, there is a ticket counter that they set up, and in the morning there were men, in the night wears and lungis standing so that they can buy the ticket for their wives and go back and give it to them as a gift, right? But by the end of it, they ensured that about 150 odd children in Coimbatore got funded with respect to their education for an entire year. Then there's a second incident in one of our cities where, we generally in MAD or Make a Difference, we run weekend programs where volunteers who are recruited go to shelter homes on the weekends and teach kids communicative English or career awareness. But there's this group of youngsters in the city called Cochin who went above and beyond what they signed up for. They went every day to the orphanage and they taught the children English, not only apart from English, social, science, math, and all the subjects that they were studying in school. And because of that, the result that kids were achieving at school level went up by about 150 or 200%. The results went up by 150 or 200%. That means if the kid was scoring about 30, he was now scoring about good 50, 60 marks in the exam. And if you ask me, I'd even go ahead and say this is much bigger than a movement, because I believe our generation today is in this one phase where we can solve the biggest problem world has been facing so far, be it illiteracy, be it poverty, any of the biggest challenges. And finally, I'd like to say only one thing. People believe that the most powerful thing than thousands of armies is an idea whose time has come. But in the movement that I'm part of, Make a Difference, we believe the most powerful thing than thousands and thousands of armies is a generation whose time has come. This is our generation. This is our time. Let's do this. Thanks a lot.